Hello everyone, welcome to another video. In this one we are going to take a look at the fist and claw weapons in Dark Souls 2. This weapon class does not have a lot of reach, but it can have a decent stagger potential, as well as some of the weapons that are pretty interesting. You'll see what I mean. Anyways, let's start off with the claw weapons first. So the normal claws can be obtained by Gilligan after you get him to move to Majula. These things weigh 1 unit. A good thing to do with these weapons is obviously to power stance them. You have to be all the way up close to the enemy to use them, so might as well hit them with more damage and multiple times. Have only 30 durability, 120 counter damage. The claws don't really have a very high bleed buildup. Probably wouldn't recommend upgrading it if you like claw weapons, because there's another claw weapon that is significantly better. We'll take a look at that one right now. That claw weapon is the Manikin Claws. The Manikin weapons do seem to have quite a bit of bleed buildup. They seem to be very good for bleed. So these ones have a little bit higher stats to use, and they weigh half a unit more, but they have significantly more durability at 50. So the Manikin Claws do 100 bleed base with 77 scaling, but they also have significantly higher normal physical damage than the regular claws. So yeah, these things are kind of your go-to claw weapons if that is what you want to use. They can be a little bit difficult to obtain because you have to kill the mannequins that wield these weapons, but they are sort of the best. Like I mentioned before, power stancing these weapons can be pretty good. So bleed and poison both scale off of your dexterity, so increasing your dexterity will definitely help with that. But yeah, these are pretty fun, pretty good fist weapons. So the next weapon coming up is the Malformed Claw. You get this from the shadow enemies. This thing doesn't have any bleed, and it's kind of a downgrade from the Manikin Claws, because with my build at 50 strength and dex, it has less physical damage as well as less physical scaling than the Manikin Claws, and no bleed. Now the thing about this weapon is that it has 140 counter damage, so that could be pretty decent, especially because a lot of your attacks are going to be counter attacks, so they don't do too bad. But yeah, nothing too special. I would expect this thing to have some bleed on it though. It looks like it's a weapon that should, you know. Anyways, not much more to say. Pretty straightforward weapon. So let's go to the next one. So the Work Hook, this thing does do bleed damage. It has 120 counter damage, but it only does a little bit, 3 more bleed damage with the scaling than the Manikin Claws. However, it has significantly less base damage. This thing only starts off at 40 base damage, which is very, very low. Not a good weapon whatsoever. I believe that even the normal claws would be better than this. Not sure why it's in the game, but it is what it is. Would not recommend this thing. It upgrades with normal Titanite, but you're probably better off using another weapon. Let's talk a little bit about the fist weapons. Starting us off is the almighty and famous Cestus, or Cestus. You can buy this from Malincia, and it upgrades with normal Titanite. These things do strike damage, and these weapons also do not have very high starting damage. They do, however, have 130 counter damage, and they only weigh 0.5 units. Pretty much the majority of my damage is coming from the scaling. It has 90 base, and I'm getting 251 from the scaling of the weapon. It does get an A scaling in strength and dex once you have 50 strength and dex, so that's pretty good. And these things as well are very good to power stance. That's probably the best way to use these kinds of weapons. The stats are not too high at 10 strength and 7 dex. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's go to the last weapon, which is a very, very interesting one. So this one here is the Bone Fist. You can get this in the 3rd DLC, in an area where you have to light some torches to open up a door, and you may have to fight a Flexile sentry. These things have 150 counter damage, 30 poise break, which is very uncommon for such small weapons. However, the moveset of this thing kind of goes completely crazy, and you do some sick moves. However, they do take quite a bit of stats to use, and even more to power stance. They take 30 dexterity with an A scaling in dex, and 15 strength with an S scaling in strength. These things start off doing 20 base damage, so the majority of your damage is coming from the scaling. Now, even though the moveset is pretty fun, they are probably slightly worse than the regular Cestus when it comes to DPS. So technically, power stancing 2 Cestuses would be more effective for doing damage. But this thing is a little bit more versatile. Think about something like Santir Spear versus other twin blade weapons, or whatever you want to compare that weapon to. It doesn't have as much damage as weapons that are similar to it, but the strength of the weapon comes from the utility. So yeah, the Bone Fist can certainly make you do some cool stuff, and you can get pretty creative with these. They do upgrade with Twinkling Titanite, so you know, being a DLC weapon usually comes with higher stats to wield, as well as more rare upgrade materials. I think the Bone Fist is one to take a look at. It can also be power stance with other claw weapons, which is pretty neat if you want to get some utility out of that. So yeah, not much else to say. You will have a lot of fun, feel like Bruce Lee when you're fighting with these things. That was all for this video. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.